And I was asking myself, why is it we have some highly resource intensive parts of the business that over the last 3 or 4 years, we've failed to ask ourselves, why don't we disrupt this in some way? There are parts of the business that effectively haven't changed almost since we started. I think a lot of the time people think, if it ain't broken, you don't need to fix it. So, and therefore they tend to go after new ideas. So new ideas often are, like you say, new markets, new propositions for those markets. It's kind of fun, isn't it, sometimes to think about, new ways of working that are a bit wacky, a bit out there, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you're absolutely right. People do tend to come with the new ideas around new things that we can do. And, I definitely like to look at some of the things that we're doing relatively well and think how we can have some new ideas about disrupting those.
Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. I'm Richard Metcalf, founder of X Quadrant, and my mission is to help the world's top CEOs and entrepreneurs shift from incremental to exponential progress and create a huge positive impact on our world. Now, that requires you to reinvent yourself and transform your business. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO. As artificial intelligence rises, what are the skills that you'll need to develop in your business, with your staff, and as a leader? This is the question that I explore today with Tim Smeaton. Tim is the CEO of Kubrick Group and the founder of that business. And that business helps companies realize the value of their data, their AI, and their cloud technology. And Tim's really been fascinated and looking at what are the skills that graduates and employees and employers will need as artificial intelligence really disrupts things. And today's episode, we get really into that question. Tim also shares his wisdom as an entrepreneur, why he recommends you ignore amazing opportunities, how he found a structural issue that was valuable and he felt he could solve in his business. And as well, he shares some of his inside track on exactly how AI is disrupting IT departments, businesses, and leadership. So enjoy this conversation with Tim Smeaton. Hi, Tim, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you today because, Tim, I know that you're a serial entrepreneur. You've built multiple companies. I think this is your third or perhaps fourth business. And right now you're right at the heart of AI, and you run a consulting business that focuses on AI and AI skills, a player called Kubrick Group. And before we jump into that, which I'm sure is going to be a fascinating conversation, I want to know why one of your pieces of leadership advice is to tell people to ignore amazing opportunities, which doesn't sound the kind of advice I would expect from a serial entrepreneur.
Well, I think it's the number one affliction for an entrepreneur, really, isn't it? Is that there's always lots of opportunities. I had a break of 3 years before I started Kubrick Group, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, and I had lots and lots of ideas, and I had to find a way of not just running after them willy-nilly and getting carried away. So I had to sort of formalize an approach and pick the best one to give me the best chance of it winning. And it's the same in business. I surround myself with people that are more intelligent with me, and they come up with lots of good ideas all the time. And if we followed all of them, we'd never really get anything done. So I believe in a really tight arrowhead, picking the best idea and going after that 100% rather than trying to spread yourself too thin, really. And that I stood the test of time across all of my entrepreneurial ventures, I think, over the years. Seems to have worked anyway.
Yeah, well, obviously it has. So tell me a bit more about that, actually. So how would you do that? Because I guess many entrepreneurs would say, yeah, I would love, I do want to focus, but I don't seem to in the end. These ideas sneak in and we end up diluting focus. So how do you kind of do that? Or how do you, with yourself, perhaps when you're choosing the business, or then when you have with your executive team, when other people are bringing ideas to you, how do you keep that tight arrowhead?
I tend to, for my own personal approach, I tend to be quite sort of diagrammatic in everything that I do. So if I was just, wanting to put things in order of importance, I might put different, I think of like quadrant models always, and I'm always thinking what's on the x-axis, what's on the y-axis, and I sort of plot my ideas to always try and get them into some semblance of importance. Or equally, I can, when I'm working with other people, ask them initially, what's the what's the real opportunity we're going after here, or what's the problem we're trying to fix? And if we can't answer that question, let's make sure we can. And once you can, once you know the problem that you're trying to fix, you can create a scorecard, and then you put your ideas through the scorecard. And I've had to teach myself to become very, very analytical, because I'm, stylistically, I'm a creative individual, and I can run after lots of good ideas as much as I like. So I just think it's sort of order sorting, stack ranking, and getting clear on, what it is that you're trying to do, and the question that you're trying to answer, basically. I'm told that the skill set I've most developed by the people I work with is the ability to ask really piercing questions. So I think that's probably the other thing, really strong qualification of what it is that you're trying to do. But I've wasted countless hours chasing after stupid ideas. The word pivot is really one that drives me insane, because I think it's just an easier option sometimes to think about pivoting than it is to think about the real situation you're in at any point in time. So I'm a bit of a stickler for that. Must annoy people, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? I think there is. I often say there's a time for strategy and a time for execution. In other words, there is a time to review and decide: do we keep doing what we're doing, or do we change? But what I'm picking up is, I think sometimes, more often, people use pivot as an excuse for chasing the new thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Or introducing complexity. The ability to execute on something is a key factor, isn't it, in deciding what you might want to do. There could be two amazing business ideas. I can't think of two off the top of my head to illustrate as an example, but the number one score might be the ability for you to execute on that business idea, rather than the size of the market opportunity or whatever it might be. But yeah, I used to have a mentor many years ago, I won't name, who used to say everyone has good ideas. Tim, sort of hold a mirror up to me, and I think that's absolutely true. But not everyone executes on them, or initially takes the decision to take the risk to try and execute upon them. So yeah, I do believe in that, and I think the older that you get, and the more you kind of see this type of stuff, you do realize that the grit and the grind around execution is often where the biggest impact is, basically.
Yeah, and within your own business, or within your business experience, when people bring ideas to you, is there kind of like ideas where you feel actually they are distractions, they are adding complexity? Is there kind of a realm in which they tend to emerge? Is it like new product lines or new markets to pursue, or is it new operational efficiencies or things to refine? I'm just kind of wondering whether you kind of have particular areas you watch out for. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a really, really good question, because I was actually pondering this question in a meeting prior to the one that we're in right now, genuinely. And I was asking myself, why is it we have some highly resource intensive parts of the business that over the last 3 or 4 years, we've failed to ask ourselves, why don't we disrupt this in some way? There are parts of the business that effectively haven't changed almost since we started. I think a lot of the time people think, if it ain't broken, you don't need to fix it. So, and therefore they tend to go after new ideas. So new ideas often are, like you say, new markets, new propositions for those markets. It's kind of fun, isn't it, sometimes to think about, new ways of working that are a bit wacky, a bit out there, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you're absolutely right. People do tend to come with the new ideas around new things that we can do. And, I definitely like to look at some of the things that we're doing relatively well and think how we can have some new ideas about disrupting those. And sometimes I might put the priority above, those sorts of priorities above a new market. I think you can also, when you talk about quite a lot of new ideas, you can sort of put your analytical hat on pretty quickly and look for the question, which is why do we need to do this, and why would it work? So again, just back to that point, isn't it? Asking the right questions really to people as to the why and whether it works. But I think your question is a very good one, because I do see that a lot. Shiny new stuff. That's much more fun, isn't it?
Yeah. In fact, I've realized in my own business experience that even within X Quadrant, I've done something similar actually, which is, a phase of experimentation, which does tend to create complexity. And the problem is it distracts because you divide your attention. And what I spent the last season really focusing on is realizing fundamentally what we do is always the same thing, right? Like it's actually helping these, I call maverick bright spark leaders who aren't satisfied with kind of conventional incremental success, really push the levers around how they think and how they act and how they lead to kind of create these breakthroughs. And all the things that we end up doing end up fundamentally around that theme, right? Of how do you build a world-changing business or create a legacy of exponential impact? And so rather than seeing, for example, in my own world, different products and services as different, I'm thinking, well, how do we actually make it all one thing so that, potentially with various levels of access, various ways in, but fundamentally, whenever we improve that, we're improving the one thing and not deciding which of the 6 things we're going to improve. So I think trying to look at ways to converge so that rather than dealing with multiple initiatives, you have more of a platform approach.
Yeah.
Worked well for me.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think you're always back to the same question, aren't you? What's the problem we're really here to fix? And that kind of aligns people. And if you can all align around a vision and surround yourself with good people, then you're giving yourself a good shot at some success. I think that's the secret.
Yeah, exactly. So let's switch gears a little bit and start to talk about the business that you decided to build after you'd gone through this process. So perhaps we can start there. Like, what was it about, when you come up with your list of ideas after your 3 years pause, what was it that made you go, yep, this is the next business around AI?
Well, I mean, it wasn't so much around AI or data, which is kind of where we started. It was more that I felt that there was a structural problem, and the structural problem was that people coming out of university and college aren't suitably equipped to do the type of work that the vast majority of enterprises and organizations want done, which is technology orientated work. People are coming out without those skill sets. So therefore, I thought there was a bridge that could be built that would enable people from all sorts of different backgrounds to be trained in data skills. At the time, we chose data because that's where the biggest demand and supply imbalance existed. And we built an engine basically to train people up to be able to undertake data work that our clients would find useful. And we built project teams around those people and then went and solved client problems around data and latterly around AI. So there's a lot of people, statistically, 40-something% of the jobs advertised are around technology for graduates. But the number of people who are majoring in, a computational science field is so significantly less than that there's just a huge demand and supply imbalance. And the pace of change within technology goes faster than the pace of change within education. So that demographic I'm describing is only going to, in my opinion, worsen as time goes by. So we thought about build the engine. The engine would allow that bridge to happen. And then we thought, well, we would want to deploy people into businesses to be able to solve client problems. And that in turn also did one other thing, which was increase diversity in our industry, because by taking people from all sorts of different backgrounds, different types of education, and reskilling them, then you're just opening up the inclusivity funnel to allow you to have a more diverse workforce. So I wanted to try and solve that problem, and the act of picking data and AI was where we decided to do it, because the difference was so dramatic, basically.
I find this really interesting because you actually found a bottleneck and made that the business model. Whereas a lot of leaders actually complain, oh, we don't have enough people, available in the market for our kind of business. And yeah, well, you said it was actually an opportunity, because if we actually solve that problem, do it ourselves, train people ourselves, build the engine, then actually we have a competitive advantage, because we'll have a much bigger flow of, I guess, available candidates than anybody else, because we can train them better than anybody else.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. I mean, the model intrinsically carries further risk, because of course we're training the individuals, we're paying for their salaries, and we're training them for 16 weeks before we can even make them productive. Whereas the traditional consulting model is, give them some training for a short period of time, and then let the clients, put them on projects within clients to skill them up. And the client effectively pays for for some of their training as well. It's a well-known fact. So we just wanted to make a very clear model that showed that we were adding value. We were accretive to the data and AI industry through this type of process. And it's interesting, because when you do come up with a business idea, you go and validate it. You go and talk to some people, some trusted advisors. I was fortunate to have some old clients that were on the periphery of what I was talking about, and I went and met them. And one of them said to me, he said, "God, what a great business! That's a really humble business. I really like that idea. It's so additive to the industry." And then I met another individual, and they went, "Gosh, yeah, I'd really like that idea. I'll have 50 of them." So I won't lie, I was also heavily impacted by just what a few people said to me. I hadn't had that before with any of my businesses, that they went, "Gosh, that is a good idea. That really is solving a problem, and it's a good model." So I thought I might be onto a little bit of a winner when that happened, basically. And and the rest history is, as we said, grown, a staggering rate, really.
And so now in the business, how many people have been trained through that model?
Two and a half. I mean, I'm rounding up numbers here. 2,500 nearly.
Yeah, amazing.
And it started in the UK, and we've been in the US for 2 years now. And it's as I say, it's a good wholesome model, isn't it? I come to this company, they train me up, and they deploy me into work that I enjoy doing, and they accelerate my career and kickstart me. And we've got a wonderful alumni now of people that have been through this program, that some of which are actually our clients already. So hopefully the sort of the payback also is in our favor as well from that alumni.
So does this make growth very expensive if you have a 16-week investment period, 4 months before you can do day one of billing, right? Obviously in consulting, that is quite a hard model to pull off. Is it just that your rates are so then, you're so astronomically profitable at that point, perhaps, right, that it's really easy? Or were there other ways that you dealt with that? Is it just because you obviously had high growth as well? So investment plus high growth would mean quite a big cash requirement.
Well, you have to remember that the consulting first is in many ways very high as well, because they carry a lot of tiered individuals and a lot of non-billing resource. So, we didn't have that cost pressure on us. Undoubtedly, we found that, we are not paying the top salaries to the people that we hire that perhaps our end user client is, because the proposition is so strong. Who else is going to pay you a salary and train you for 16 weeks? So, you can afford yourself a slightly lower training cost from a salary perspective, because the proposition is so strong. I don't want to get into a podcast, but rates and things of that nature. But we're pretty damn good value, because we generally actually are a lower rate card than a lot of the implementation and consulting partners are already, and that might be legacy of how they've driven their costs up. And the final thing is also we let our clients keep some of the project teams, so they retain the IP. So that there is a value there that they see. So that allows you to, add a bit more onto the rates as well. But no, I think we're, reassuringly good value, Richard. I don't know if that's it.
Very good. Yeah, well, I think it's a great model, because you're really putting your money where your mouth is, right? I mean, your whole business is predicated on investing in people, training them up, and making them valuable, right? In that area.
And this isn't the case now, because where we are in the technology cycle obviously is slightly different at the moment. But at the height of the market, sort of pre-COVID and post-COVID, the average tenure of people in the data and AI industry was sort of 12 months or less. So it takes someone quite a while to get productive. Whereas our average tenure in our business is about 2.8 years at the moment. And that it also has something to do with how young we are as a business, because it drags that down. But you can see that there is a payback also for that investment that comes from our people, which is that they're not all graduates that work for us, obviously, but we do manage to retain our graduates for a lot longer. So hopefully there is a loyalty that we get from quite a lot of them, which is because of what we've done and the development that we've given them, and the opportunities that we can give them as well. So, elongated tenure is a very important measurement for us.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. So, as AI, obviously you started in the world of data, AI has kind of obviously really kicked into gear in the meantime. What are you seeing in terms of the effects, I guess, both on demand, what people are asking you for, and also on the skills and the supply side, right? Have you had to change the way that you train people, what you train them in? If you're a graduate, what should you be thinking about? What skills should you be building, I guess, to be employable?
Well, I think just so we've talked perhaps from a demand perspective first, and kind of what's happening out there in the world as far as I can see. Is there is a little bit of a hiatus at the moment, because it's the first time the technology has been talked about around the boardroom table almost before the IT departments have talked about it, because the speed, I'm sure a lot of your listeners have seen the statistics around how quickly ChatGPT got to 10 million users or whatever the statistic is, I can't recall now. You can see that the sort of knowledge and adoption and thinking around large language models has been very, very quick. So what's lagging in a lot of organizations is the governance. And there's a lot of insecurity as to how do they actually use AI, particularly around these large language models. Where's the data coming from? And we've got copyright infringement issues that we're actually worried about. Are our suppliers' systems with AI built in? Are they infringing any copyrights, or are they using our data in their system for the benefit of others? So it's a strange thing that the technology is sort of accelerated, but beyond or faster than the acceptance of a lot of organizations to implement it. So you do have a strange sort of phenomena at the moment. But what I see that translating into is just continuous small experiments by our 150 something clients at the moment in lots of different parts of their business to try and actually understand what impact it can have on them. So from a demand point of view, people are really trying to learn from consulting firms like Kubrick Group, what's the right environment to set these things up in, what's the right governance structure, what's the right controls to have, and actually how can we generate ROI by doing this, and how can we really, really benefit our business? So everyone's coming from a relatively low base in terms of understanding and knowledge around that. So I think the world is just experimenting at the moment with these large language models. AI, of course, has been around for quite a long time, and there's lots of other really cool stuff that's happening in it, which I won't go into. But I think I would basically sum it up by a period of reflection is being undertaken by a lot of organizations at the moment when they think about, their strategies over the next 1, 2, 3 years. And they're definitely getting very excited by these productivity gains that are being mentioned that they could achieve. So I think the demand is focused around that type of things, but we haven't seen the total sort of industrialization or productization yet of AI within corporates, because they're still in experimentation mode. And I suspect they've still got another 6 to 18 months of that because of the legal framework they want to think about. And then if you're a graduate right now, I mean, gosh, what an interesting and exciting time to think about your career, isn't it? And it's definitely more difficult because, and there is plenty of opinion around, quite a few IT technical jobs being eaten up by AI. Coding engines and things of this nature might mean that you don't need quite so many software developers as you have done before. So it's definitely a more complex, employment market. So, and that's also complemented by interest rates, and being high, and maybe investment being a little bit low by people hiring. So, it's not it's also a slightly more difficult market for graduates. But, I think the ability to put yourself into analytical thinking and analytical roles within organizations is still the future for a great deal of the graduate appointments kind of going forward as time goes by.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation. This is just a quick interlude to introduce you to 2 transformative programs that we run. The first is Rivendell, my exclusive group of top CEOs who are committed to transforming themselves, their businesses, and the world. It's an incredible peer group and a deep coaching experience that will push you to new heights, no matter how successful you've already been. The second is Impact Accelerator, a coaching program for executives who are ready to make a big leap forward in their own leadership. It's regularly described as life-changing, and no other program provides such personal strategic clarity, a measurable shift in stakeholder perceptions, and a world-class leadership development environment. Find out about both of these programs at xquadrant.com/services. Now back to the conversation. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a question about, whether you're doing the calculations yourself or, or some of the reasoning, or whether you're able to kind of have a meta view, right? Because clearly if you are going to be lost, is asking the right questions, at least at this point, seems to be a lot of the battle, right? And knowing how to interpret what you've been given, right? And so if you don't have the mental frameworks for that, it's going to be hard to add value.
Yeah. I'm a big subscriber to the World Economic Forum. I don't read reports from that many sources because, I can form my own opinions. But I always have focused on the World Economic Forum. And for many years, they've said that the future skills gap is around critical thinking and communication skills and things of that nature. So, my advice to anyone coming out of education really is that, some of these skill sets that I've just described are going to be really, really important to you no matter what job you do. And, and how much are they really developed in places of education? I'm not sure that they necessarily are. Your background might might be the biggest factor that relates to your capabilities in the areas I've described. So I think, if you want true diversity within your organization, you have to accept that perhaps you're going to have to train people on some of the things I've just mentioned, not just, how to code or how to be an accountant or whatever it might be.
And so when we talk about the productivity improvements that you alluded to earlier on, where are they? I mean, are they going to be, in your view, like, because obviously you could look at them in the white collar work, you can look at them specifically in the world of coding. There's potentially a number of different places. And yeah, well, how do you kind of see that? And I know there's no crystal ball at this point, right? And the jury's still going to be out. If you're new, it'll be probably very rich by now already investing. But what's in your mind?
Well, I think you have two zones really. The first zone is where you see, repetitive tasks being undertaken. So I think first on the list, if you read any research, will be around sort of customer interaction, chatbots and things of this nature. I believe the latest report I saw was sort of 50-something% of organizations already have invested in that. So I think the ability to look into the business and see where you have highly repetitive tasks that involve interaction is a key place to see and look for productivity gains. And frankly, they probably exist in every single department. So the question is, how are you gonna put that in order, really? And then the second, I think, exciting part of AI really is more around decision making. And again, you can look into lots of research about this, but apparently when you get over 6 or 7 factors involved in a decision, us humans aren't very good at dealing with those. My wife would argue that once I get above two things to think about, I'm not very good at decisions. But the point is, AI is good at that. So I think the other thing, around better quality decision making, which comes from analytics and things of that nature, is a very exciting place to be at the moment. The decision science, decision twins, people that are helping humans make better quality decisions, I think is a really, really, really exciting place, because they're, rather than just talk about operational efficiency and perhaps overhead removal, which is the first example I gave, you're actually talking there about better quality decision making and uncovering information that you might readily have found before, allowing certain things to happen much more quickly that are much more dramatic. So that could be anything from, drug research. That's really primed and pumped for this type of stuff, for example. So I think you've got two really interesting areas. And the big question I always ask myself is kind of, if these organizations really get these productivity improvements, and let's say it adds 3 or 4% to their EBITDA margin, what are they going to do with that 3 or 4%? Is it all going to go to the shareholder? Is 1% going to go to something else? So I think there's another interesting question, which is, what will this productivity gain do in the economies of the world? Will it drive more innovation, future growth of these companies, or will it just be a way that shareholders actually receive a higher rate of return on their holdings? So, that's an interesting quandary. And if you can answer that one, you can probably start predicting what's going to happen to the employment market. I can't answer it. I don't know. But I think that's the really, really interesting question from my perspective.
We better ask an AI to find out what they say. Sounds like it's a multivariable problem.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, you'll know when it's really clever, when it just tells you an answer that suits it better. But I think we've got a while to go on that, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So So that's actually really, it's an interesting question, which is, you're obviously kind of helping your customers navigate extremely uncertain times. And so, clearly you probably have a better vision than most people because you're, involved with different customers and, you've had to kind of go deep in your own industry and do all your training and all the rest of it. And yet there's still many questions which are hard to answer. So I'm kind of wondering, how do you kind of help clients in that context, right? So do you kind of recommend, do you focus on very short-term kind of projects? Do you focus on multiplying experiments? Do you have a particular point of view that you kind of actually really deeply believe in and kind of evangelize as this is probably the way things are going to happen? Do you do scenario planning? How do you kind of help clients navigate what is a level of complexity that probably means that nobody can actually predict what's going to happen?
I think, I think at the moment it's really hard to have those huge, big conversations. So I think it's the ability to try and refine down each problem into a defined problem statement. I don't know what percentage of times when we meet clients this is, but it's a very high one. The problem that we think we're in the meeting to talk about is never really the problem that we're there really to talk about, if you know what I mean. So having a good structured approach to really qualifying what is it we're really going after here? What's the itch we're trying to scratch really? I think solving that, getting really clear on that, then enables you to kind of work out what's in and out of the scope of what you're doing, and actually therefore what's the real measurement of success that you wish to apply to it. And those three things can very often be out of kilter in my experience. The kind of, here's the problem statement, this is the scope of what it is we're trying to do on the business, and here's how we're going to measure its success, and the three aren't always in kilter and linked. So if you crack that, then you can get into experimenting at a lower cost, getting some evidence or proof point that that the problem statement can be solved. And then often for clients, you're helping them then actually identify what budget they can allocate to it, because they actually can see a little bit of evidence of what the ROI is that they're going to get from that piece of work. So that becomes relatively formulaic. I think when you're having those bigger conversations, which you were alluding to before, which is, how are we going to be affected by all of this? I just believe that, it's going to be a difficult, a bit of a difficult period for organizations to put things into order of priority and not try and do too much, and relate the things they're doing to their business. Don't become too internally focused, just looking for productivity improvement from this type of stuff. Think about how you're positioning your business for the market that you see in 3 or 4 years' time. So don't, become too introverted, I guess.
Yeah, and what's coming to my mind, well, it leads back to what we talked about at the start, right? Which is about the shiny object syndrome versus focus, right? And also, not creating complexity, less is worth it, because potentially building out a whole structure to use AI to solve things might be really powerful if you know what you're trying to deal with. But if your business is going to shift dramatically in that area, it might be another IT project that you need to rebuild because it's now a different question you need to be answering. So what I'm getting a sense is, again, that need for really kind of picking your bets is a skill.
What's most scary in my mind for people right now with AI, if you're running a business, really is what does that future marketplace look like? And is there someone just running somewhere in my shadows that's suddenly going to come and eat my breakfast by kind of redefining, the way of my business model so dramatically that, it has the kind of, the effect that the internet had on organizations, and just look at Amazon now. There's lots of examples in the past, which we didn't used to have 20 years ago. Lots of examples in the past of actually how even very large corporates can, have their breakfast eaten very, very quickly. And I just think what's a little bit scary at the moment is visualizing what is, how does my business model need to evolve to suit the world in the future? And, I'm not around the boardroom table of our clients, so I don't get to be involved in that conversation. But I have a sense that there's a lot of those conversations going on at the moment, and how is the consumer going to change due to AI and things of this nature is quite these are big questions, aren't they? They're really sort of for people far brighter than me.
Well, something to my mind, reminds me of all my strategy consulting days, but it's really asking, like, if you're going to build a new business, like now or in a couple of years' time, if you did want to kind of really disrupt this industry, what business would you build? Which is a very different question from where in our existing business processes can we use AI? It's a very different way of looking at the question. And my suspicion is probably it's that first question, which is going to be the game changer on that.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think and therefore that's where the risk is that if you go after the short-term wins and deploy all your resources around AI and data is so important. It's not just AI because, if you haven't got the data, then don't spend the money really, or you can't validate the data. So yeah, I do think it's going to be a super, super interesting time. They always say, I don't know if I'm a bit older, I'm 52, and I sort of ended up turning into my parents or, my mentors when I was younger. But I've definitely do subscribe to the sort of every decade, it seems to get harder. So, it was definitely easier to start a business when I was 24 than it is to start one now. It's just the environment. It's just way more complex, and we're living in a more complex world, aren't we? There's lots of other reasons at the moment around, political imbalance and things of that nature. So, yeah, it's it's tough.
Yeah. Well, so Tim, it's a really interesting conversation. Let's just quickly, as we move towards the end here, I've got two of my favorite questions for you. So the first question is, within Kubrick Group, how do you want to multiply your impact? What would a multiplicative success look like for you and for the business?
I think solving, expanding the digital areas within which we operate and solving the resource problem of not enough highly skilled people. So building out our training engine and bringing more diversity into that training engine for people from more backgrounds. I'd really like to see that happen because, it's not just about how we deploy them into projects. It's really about how many people we can, how many lives can we change really is kind of the measurement that I would apply from a personal perspective and for the business in terms of our training engine and how we bring them into the industry. And I, on a second point, I'd really like to see the effect that we have on our clients. How do we really multiply the effect on our clients, and how do we bring some of the processes and repeatable processes that we use to really accelerate something that they want to do. So I'd measure it by those sort of war stories in 3 or 4 years of how many clients we've really changed the lives of and how many people we'd changed the lives of. That's our sort of impact measurement that we like to look at. And how do you do that? Well, you do that through increasing your TAM. You do that through sort of increasing the skill areas or the specialisms within which you operate, your geographies. That's the kind of the business management book, isn't it? But that will be the things that are really pertinent for me and for the organization. And I guess also how many people we've employed here at Kubrick Group, how long they've stayed, and how much fun and success in relatively equal measure they'd had during that period.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of things we could go into there, but perhaps for the sake of brevity, we won't right now. There's plenty of places that I've been really curious about. But the question I really always love to really finish with is, where might you need to evolve yourself as a leader as, to help your company multiply its impact or to multiply your own impact? Because you're somebody clearly who's built several, businesses in the past. This is obviously working out really well. And you could probably stay and rest on your laurels and kind of keep going as you are, and it's all going to be great. But what might be a shift that you could still make in who you are, how you show up, what your leadership style is, that would really get everything playing at a different level?
Well, I think your biggest strength is your biggest weakness. So, I love a startup. I love the adrenaline rush of it all. It really is great fun being part of a new company that's growing fast and all of that type of thing. And it's but as organizations get larger, you need to be able to have a really effective leadership team around you that is running the business. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included, is how do you build that team? How do you make sure that it's a well-formed team that is driving the business in the right direction and executing on all its plans, and learning to take some of the big decisions itself. And to do that, it's, you can't just one day be the key decision maker, the entrepreneur, that sort of set up the business and then say to them, right, it's all over to you now, guys. You have to evolve and change personally and get the team to grow with you on that journey. And that is really difficult to take people on, on that journey. And often you hire a lot of these people from much larger organizations when you hit a certain growth size. So they come in and they're on a bit of a learning journey. So it's about, don't underestimate the amount of time you need to spend communicating with one another, looking at that future picture and, painting yourselves in it and helping them paint themselves in it and asking the questions to really create a plan that, facilitates success. And, that's mentally really, it's difficult sometimes to pull all of that together and kind of get a bigger team of people acting as one towards a tight arrowhead. And I find that really difficult, and I have to spend a lot of time reflecting about how I will do that. My parents used to say, "Where fools rush in," one of those sayings that I end up saying to my own children now. And I've got to learn that, that reflection time's good, and helping people towards that. So sit back a little bit more and like that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I see it often. Thank you for pointing it out, because it's actually some of that deeper identity shift as well, right? Because the value, as an entrepreneur, you have the value of like charging head first, and being at the very front of the charge, and also kind of being in some ways the genius who understands the biggest. Who has the biggest possible picture of everything and all the history and all, and all the kind of background. And that kind of shift, at some point, it can actually become like a prison, because you're so much the bottleneck, right? And I think you're right.
Yeah, I learned the hard way that I used to be a little bit addicted to having the answer, but now I have learned to feel a great deal of satisfaction from other people having a far better answer than me, and find the patience to do it. So that is my, seek first to understand, then be understood.
Beautiful. Well, that's a great place to leave it. Hey, Tim, it's really been great speaking with you. I've enjoyed really this whole discussion, starting from, this question around focus and looking at different opportunities, and then actually seeing the way that you built the business by identifying what many people would see as a problem, like we can't get enough people, and actually turning that into the engine, solving that almost in the back office as a core differentiator, competitive advantage that can then help you serve clients. So it was the direct client problem where you were solving the client problem, but you were solving almost a level back, so that you could have a unique position in the industry, which I think is a fantastic lesson for many leaders who perhaps who have problems that actually, if they look to those problems, they might be able to create the solution to those problems and take a leap forward. So I think it's a great message, along with all the other great discussion we've had over the future of AI. So appreciate it. And look forward to following on your journey. If people want to get in touch with you or with Kubrick Group, where do they do that?
Well, it's one or two usual. If they want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is always good. Tim Smeaton is a good way. I do look at them all. If you want to learn more, look at the website. It's kubrickgroup.com. So that's the best. I think that's the best two ways. And my email address will be pretty easy to work out as well. It doesn't have any dots in it. So, I'm sure it wouldn't take a huge leap of faith.
There we go. Say no more. Figure that one out.
Yeah, too true.
Okay, well, Tim, many thanks. And look forward to following along on the story.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard. Thanks for your time.
Cheers. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, that's a wrap. If you received value from this conversation, please do leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. We deeply appreciate it. And if you'd like to check out the show notes from this episode, head to xquadrant.com/podcast, where you'll find all the details. Now, finally, when you're in top leadership, who supports and challenges you at a deep level to help you multiply your impact? Discover more about the different ways we can support you at xquadrant.com.